Hello there, YouTube. It's Felfop. Dan here with Gabby. And, we call ourselves FemRA, and I looked online before we had decided to do that, and I noticed that there was the subreddit of FemRA, and it has like 700 people in it, and it was pretty inactive from what I saw, and so I was like, well, this is a cool name. I'd thought of it outside of that, and I was like, this is a cool name, and this isn't really getting used. So I figured I could just use it. Well, I go back and I look and I see that it's adminned by some honey badgers like Karen and Allison. Well, sorry, wasn't my intention to step on the honey badgers at all. So we're going to change our name, but we don't have a name. So, tell them, Gabby.
Do I have to? Give us a name.
Yeah, send us a name. Give us a suggestion, and we'll try to figure something out. If one of you mentions a better name than one of us think of in the meantime, then we'll rebrand. But again, sorry Karen, sorry Allison, sorry the rest of you out there that admin that group. I really thought that it was basically a dead group. I didn't realize that it was just one more project y'all have going on.
It was a cool name.
It is a cool name.
That we thought of, but somebody else thought of it first.
So, what do you do?
Yeah.
But
sorry.
We had made a plan to do the next video on the he for she thing. So, without further ado, we could just dive right into that.
I am reaching out to you because we need your help. We want to end gender inequality. And to do this, we need everyone involved.
So the first little clip that I wanted to talk about is right at the beginning of her speech, and I think it's important because she says we want to end gender inequality, which I think is a really good statement. I think for everybody. I mean, you'd like that, I'd like that, everybody would like that.
Sure.
But she follows it up by saying that we need boys and men involved, which I think is where a lot of people had maybe an issue with it, because instead of taking it upon not just herself and not just thinking positive for what the movement could be, she puts it on to somebody else, saying it's their responsibility to. She says we need everyone involved, and this includes as many men and boys as possible, but it's not so great that she only mentions that it's their responsibility.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Did you have anything to say about that clip?
It does. Out the gate, her saying that we need men and boys involved definitely is a little frustrating, because I mean, we definitely want to end gender inequality, but saying that we need, when you have to go a step out and recruit other people into a movement that's like stamped with the name feminism, is a little bit like, well, you don't exactly, it doesn't feel like men and boys are necessarily welcome. But anyway, let's just carry on, because this thing definitely said something different to me than it did to you, and I think that there's a lot here to unpack. Let's not get hung up too much on one statement.
Okay.
But
we could start with that, though. I really liked this video when I first saw it, and it's what made me kind of want to get into feminism a little bit, which is a takeaway that I had and a lot of other people had, but not so much for you and a lot of other people in your kind of groups, so we wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
And the more I've spoken about feminism, the more I have realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become synonymous with man-hating. If there is one thing I know for certain, it is that this has to stop.
So I really like a lot of what she said right there. She definitely she's in front of the United Nations instead of just some little Tumblr group or something, and she's owning it a little bit. She's not necessarily saying that feminism has caused this, but she is accepting the fact that it's become, that there's a lot of people that recognize it as synonymous with being man-hating. And I feel like that's kind of an important thing, especially if feminists are going to try to recruit men. You should probably stop the things that turn men off. How'd that hit you?
Kind of the same way. I liked that she brought up the man-hating because she touched a little bit more about, says feminism has become an unpopular word, which I think in some ways it's become more popular for people who want to spread that sort of man-hating idea, but for people who really latch on to the idea of true equality and who don't like man-hating, it's become more unpopular to consider yourself a feminist because of people like that who are kind of extreme in their views. You know, it makes people, it's kind of hard to have a solidarity movement when you don't feel that you have the same views as those people who are supposedly in the same group as you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. It's one of the things that that I've noticed a lot more recently is that just 4 or 5 years ago, it's felt like if most feminists, if I showed them something that was messed up, that was coming from the feminist camp, they would start apologetics and just be like, well, you know, they know what's best, or this is because of that, or start making excuses. And now I'm seeing a lot more of feminists accepting and being, well, more like yourself, whether it's like, well, you know, this is fuck, we don't want nothing to do with that, this isn't what we're about. Well, like the definition matters more, I think, to younger feminists than it matters to the more old ones. That definition of equality, I think, has drawn in a lot of people from your generation and right around there. And a lot of the people that were entrenched in older feminism and in the academic feminism in particular, definitely equality wasn't the goal as much as like getting women rights. And there was a time when women didn't have very many rights at all, so it makes a lot of sense. But some of the places where they end up perfectly happy to, exactly in my case, for example, the thing that got me involved in the whole mess to begin with family court, they're perfectly happy to just make it super hard for dads to make it easier for moms. And well, that's not equal. So it's definitely nice to see her acknowledge stuff like that, and it's nice to see your generation, a lot of women, being like, hey, this isn't what we want to be like.
But my recent research has shown me that feminism has become an unpopular word. Women are choosing not to identify as feminist. Apparently, I am among the ranks of women whose expressions are seen as too strong.
Now, to me, that part right there, I felt like it was a little bit of her like conflating things. It's the only one of those things that I felt like was accurate was anti-men. It's and that's not necessarily coming from Emma Watson. I'm saying that when people are saying they have a problem with feminism, it's not this strong or aggressive. I have nothing but respect for a woman that's going to stand up. If you want equal rights, you see a problem and you want to stand up and fight for it, I have nothing but respect for that. But it's the ones that come across as man-hating, the ones that basically, like a very good barometer to myself and to a lot of people who think like I do, is if you took out the word man and just added the word black in front of it, for example, would that statement still be okay, or does it become horribly offensive? And if that happens, then I feel like it falls into the man-hating camp. So I feel like she conflated some things there that, or maybe she just doesn't understand where people like me come from. And I think as we go through the video, we'll see that that's, I think, more what the issue is.
I think it is right that women be involved on my behalf in the policies and the decisions that will affect my life. I think it is right that socially I am afforded the same respect as men. But sadly, I can say that there is no one country in the world where all women can expect to receive these rights. No country in the world can yet say that they have achieved gender equality.
So she says there's no country in the world where women can expect to have the rights that she listed. And then she turns around and says, no country in the world can yet say they have achieved gender equality, which I think she's trying to make as if they're the same point. But I think that gender equality, she forgets that this isn't just one-sided. The only thing that it seems like she's very polarized in that she only is worrying about female rights in this video, which is the point of the video, I suppose. But when she says things like gender equality, no country in the world can yet say they have achieved gender equality. It's, a lot of people could say that's true, but I think that that's not only true from a feminist perspective. It's not as if women are just the only people missing rights and not equal. It's unequal from both sides of the fence. There's inequality on both sides, and I think that by saying that only women can't expect these rights, it makes it so that people from the other side of the fence can't exactly latch on to your movement as a whole, because you know what I mean?
Well, you're fine. Yeah, you're exactly right, actually. It's like the point of this video is she's trying to recruit men to help with feminism, and it's like, well, yeah, we would, if that's what you want, that would be great. But if you want men to come in and help with feminism, you have to like incentivize it. And if your reasoning is, well, you know, women don't have the same rights in any country, if you're going to look at it and say, you know, women don't make up 50% of the politicians in any of these countries. Well, yeah, but they probably don't make up 50% of the garbage collectors in any of these countries either, or the soldiers, or the bricklayers, or the electricians, and the list goes on and on and on. There are things that naturally speaking, men and women tend to gravitate towards. My feeling on this, and I'm sure that Gabby's feelings are pretty much the same on this, is that the doors should be open regardless of gender to people to do whatever they want. But to expect that at the end of the day that means you're going to have an equal number of women building hot rods as men building hot rods, an equal number of men wanting to knit as women that want to knit, that gets to be a little, in my opinion, ridiculous. You're going to find that there's always going to be, men and women are going to naturally gravitate towards different things. So when she says there's no equality, that it's really vague. There's no way to, I would like to know how she quantified that, how she determined that this is an equality. Because as far as laws go, for example, in the United States, men and women legally are on par. In some ways, men lack rights that women have in this country on a legal level, but on a social level, it's an entirely different thing. On a social level, women have frequently face an uphill struggle just trying to be taken seriously.
It is not the word that is important. It's the idea and the ambition behind it.
I think that the statement, it's not the word that's important, it's the idea behind it, is a good one. And I think it's one of the better messages of this whole video, because I think that's what we're trying to do, kind of, too, is it's not fighting for feminism. What we're trying to do is just make things okay and make things better for people. Like, we're not trying to save the world or anything, but we're trying to make things equal and right and fair.
Make the conversation viable. Make it where you can sit down and have a discussion, and by God, maybe even disagree with the other person, but at least try to empathize and see where the other person's coming from, and not let flags and battle lines get drawn over simple words. So yeah, I agree that that's a great statement on her part, especially with,
and not let labels and words define what you're trying to do, because that puts everything at a halt. You know, like, I can't talk to some people because they assume I'm a feminist, or I tell them I'm a feminist or something. A lot of y'all in the comments had an issue with me being a feminist. And accurate. You see what that just puts everything to a halt, you know? It's not the word that's important, it's what we're trying to do here. That's important.
So yeah, though I made a video a while back that was basically that I'm not that kind of feminist, I'm pretty sure is the name of the video. And it basically, I go through how it's frustrating when you talk to a feminist and they're like, I compare it. Well, just say I compare it to a gay rights advocate talking to a Christian fundamental or to a progressive Christian, and they're like, "Well, that's nice that you are, you're agreeing with me and that you support my rights, but you're a minority in the political sphere, so your label is still problematic to me." As I've mentioned before, it seems to me I see a lot more feminists. There's almost a changing of the guard here, and we've seen this kind of thing before in feminism and in lots of movements, in lots of ideologies, when the people underneath the hierarchy change their position mentally or ideologically. The hierarchy just kind of has to follow suit as best as they can, because that's where the group is now. I mean, we've been seeing this with Catholicism, for fuck's sake. That's how powerful this can be.
Men, I would like to take this opportunity to extend your formal invitation. Gender equality is your issue too.
Men, I would like to invite you to the
conversation. Oh yeah, the inviting him into the conversation part. Yes, that part was funny to me, because it was like, we've been having this conversation about gender equality for the last 100 years now, but men, we would officially like to invite you to it. It's like, oh, thanks. It just seems a little
one-sided.
Privileged.
Okay.
That would be the word that you could use with tongue in cheek.
Which is, we have talked about this before, and one of the issues we both had with the video as a whole is it did seem a little privileged. Seemed like it came from somebody who didn't have a full grasp on all of the issues from both sides, which is common. It's not...
Yeah,
we're not calling out Emma Watson for...
It's the rule, not the exception.
Yes. I thought that her inviting men to the conversation officially and formally was... I had the same opinion of it, but I did think that it was... How can we invite change to the world when only half is invited to the conversation? Which is true, but I don't think that half was ever invited to the conversation. I think that they have their own issues just as we have our own issues. And as far as feminism stands, I think that sometimes it can be one-sided and man-hating and pushing men out as if they're not invited to the conversation, which is why I think maybe that was added to the speech, but it was very off-putting, I guess.
Yeah, she missed the mark. She definitely, it feels like her heart was in the right place, or her idea was in the right place, but she definitely missed the mark.
I did like how she said at 722, though, gender equality is your issue too, which it is. She's acknowledging that it's inclusive, although not perfect.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it does take, I mean, if you want a man and a woman to interact on a level where gender equality is the thing, you do need both parties to interact on that level. You have to have the girl willing to open her own door if the guy's not going to open it for her, to be very stereotypical and lazy with my metaphor here. But, all right.
I mean, it's true. You can't only be for equality in ideology. Like, you have to, put an effort in your everyday life to work for that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's accurate.
Somebody who says, oh, I'm all for equality, but then is like, oh, I just want a man to take care of me, isn't actually doing... They're not practicing what they preach, is my point, I guess.
No, that's a fair point. That was actually a lot of what this video... I mean, in one of my old videos before, one of the things that I said when I commented on the he for she was like, oh, he for she. Wow, that sounds like old school gender norms. You want me to put my coat...
He's doing it for her.
Should I put my coat over a mud puddle for you? Exactly. Where are we going here with this?
I see.
Yeah, so anyway.
Because to date, I've seen my father's role as a parent being valued less by society, despite my needing his presence as a child as much as my mother's. I've seen young men suffering from mental illness, unable to ask for help, for fear it would make them less of a man, or less of a man. In fact, in the UK, suicide is the biggest killer of men between 20 to 49, eclipsing road accidents, cancer, and coronary heart disease.
She says a mouthful there. She really, like, at that point, she's reaching out, and it shows that she has at least looked into it, knowing that suicide is the major killer of men. And bringing it up. That's a huge thing right there, because you're admitting that society it's grinding men up at some point. There's somewhere at some level of society, men are getting ground up enough that they're dying fat. That's not the number one cause of death for women. That's not the number one cause of death for a lot of other demographics. But when you boil it down to men, so that was cool to hear her get into that. It was really nice to hear her point out that her father's role was degraded, because, as most of my subscribers know, that was my big deal. So yeah, that clip right there, actually, I think from my perspective, that's probably like the best part of this video. She really, from an MRA's perspective, that was when she really, like, for a second, really had her hand on it.
I liked it too. I think that it was good that not only did she touch on men's issues that are more commonly seen, like success and failure and mental illness, but the fatherhood role of that not being taken as seriously in society and, in your case, law. I thought that was a good thing for the video.
I've seen men made fragile and insecure by a distorted sense of what constitutes male success.
When she says that the point is that men have this view of success and failure, and if they don't achieve it, that they don't feel like they're men. It's not just men that have this view. This is a societal view. It's not like guys woke up and decided, if I don't do this, I'm not a real man. This is something that's put on us. So that's the kind of the point. It's kind of frustrating, to be honest, in this video, that, like, she goes from one great statement just to turn around like that, and kind of be like, well, it's your guys' fault anyway, when it's really not. But it is indicative of the issue that she's done a lot of research into women's issues, but she wants to recruit men, so she did some precursory research into men's issues, but she didn't really find much. Granted, this was a few years ago. I mean, it's 5 years ago now, or 4.5. Nowadays, she would have the Red Pill documentary. She could at least jump into that and see the main ones are all laid out there. And so, at any rate, things have moved on a little.
We talked a little bit about that when we were writing down our ideas for this video, is that we both kind of got that feel from this video, is that she tried to include men, but she fell a little bit flat, and she rubbed a few men the wrong way with what she said. I think that she may be coming from a place of a little bit of ignorance, and that's not to say she's ignorant. She certainly did a lot of things for this campaign that were good, but I think especially with the men's issues that she brought up, she did fall flat just because there wasn't as many, like you said, this was a few years ago, and I don't think there was as much talk about it as now. There still isn't a whole lot of talk about it. The men's rights movements are a lot smaller than feminist movements, and unless you've seen somebody go through it firsthand, or you've been through it firsthand, I think that it goes unnoticed. I mean, I certainly hadn't heard a whole lot about the men's rights movement before I met Dan, and that's just, it's not her fault that she's ignorant about it.
Exactly. It's not her fault, but it ends up, when she sticks her toes into gender politics and she makes a cry like that, the people that are most likely to respond are MRAs, because we're here in gender politics circles already. And as you've already seen, a lot of MRAs is just, you put up the name feminist and they're going to jump on you no matter what. But in this situation, she didn't have to perform perfectly, but it did show that men were a secondary thought. And that's the kind of situation where it's like, this is traditionalism. Women weren't the secondary thought in traditionalism. Men weren't the secondary thought in traditionalism, exactly. But when you're saying, hey, I need your help to make me comfortable, that was something that men were supposed to do for traditionally. That was a men's thing, was to make make women comfortable, make a nice home, make enough money to make everything good. So it felt very, to me anyway, I took it as very just like, okay, because you didn't look into this, you ended up coming across kind of like asking me to hold the door open for you, which is sad because she tried. But like you say, it wasn't enough research, and the ignorance isn't to be held against her.
We don't often talk about men being imprisoned by gender stereotypes, but I can see that they are. And that when they are free, things will change for women as a natural consequence. If men don't have to be aggressive in order to be accepted, women won't feel compelled to be submissive.
So I really liked how she started off by saying men don't have the benefits of equality either, and she can see that. But then I think she took a turn for the worst by pulling up examples of, she said that things will change for men as a or things will change for women as a consequence if they change for men. Like if men feel that they don't have to be aggressive, then women won't have to be submissive. And I don't think that's an interesting way to put it. I don't think that that's where the problems stem from. I like that she just tries. Men don't have the benefits of equality either. But then I just think that it's simple. I hate the word ignorance. That feels like an attack on her. It's not an attack on her. I just think that she didn't dive deep enough into the issues that are truly affecting people who care about this stuff. It's not aggressiveness and submissiveness that is the issue here. There are a lot of laws and real problems that are like affecting people in their daily lives. That is the real issue here. I just think her examples fall flat. Like, that's not...
Bingo.
Okay.
No, you nail it right there. It's like, she says she'll make this, like, philosophical statement. And that sounds good. It's like, okay. And then she'll, like, try to apply it with an actual thing, and you're just like, what in the fuck,
it's
lady?
so out
Come
of
on. But no, you're right. It was like she tried, but she didn't look into it enough. And some of it, again, this is 5 years ago. It was a lot different then, but now we know. Now a lot of people know, and I think that if she was to make such a video now...
But not enough people know.
Not enough
I
people
didn't know.
No, that's true. You didn't know, and
you continue to not know some stuff that I bring to you, and I'm like, hey, this is an issue.
That's exactly right, and that's, just to slightly digress into... Spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about this in one of our future videos, I'm sure, but it's like one of the problems that we have right now is that if a men's rights activist brings you something a feminist says, or a feminist brings you something an MRA says, it's almost invariably going to be the worst case scenario, the most ridiculous, backwards, stupid fucking thing the opposition says, because that's what people click on. Because that's what people read. Wow, here's a feminist that says that she thinks that maybe this shouldn't be so crazy radical. This isn't
That's
news.
not clickbaity enough.
This isn't news. But
Like,
the one that wants to paint with their vagina, now that's news.
My
So let's make fun of that, and we'll call that feminism. But it's the same thing with MRAs. And I can't tell you how hard it is, even in some of the men's rights communities, where it's like, I'm like, hey, I'm not a traditionalist, I'm not a right-winger. And they're like, well, wait a minute, all MRAs are right-wingers. Whoa, what the fuck are you talking about? So...
And all feminists are super liberal and have nose rings, too.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Some. Anyway.
It is time that we all perceive gender on a spectrum instead of two sets of opposing ideals.
Politically and stuff, yeah. Gender definitely should be seen as a spectrum, and socially. I don't want to talk about the whole transgender thing there because that's not what she's referencing. But yeah, definitely that men should be allowed to deviate from being a traditional man, and women should be allowed to deviate from being a woman. Otherwise, none of this will work. So, in a lot of ways, what Emma's at here is fundamentally accurate. It's just that every time that she tries to bring up a point, she alienates the men that care. A lot of men, the guys like Kevin Logan and people like that, they won't care. You probably don't know him, but he's another YouTuber. Hi, Kevin. I haven't made a video, or I mentioned you in a long time, you potato.
Alrighty then.
He's a nice guy.
Okay.
Anyway, but basically that's what I'm getting at, is that she misses the points that any man who's not a feminist is not going to listen to what she's saying. If she's trying to recruit male feminists, then
They're already on
there.
their side. Yeah. You don't need to recruit male feminists. You already have them. I thought that the idea of the gender spectrum was good. The reason I've had an issue with it is because I'm not the most typically feminine person that ever was to be. And a lot of people have an issue with that, or an issue with me, because I'm not the way that they think somebody should act or behave based on my gender, or they think because I'm a little bit different from the norm, I need to be pushed in some other category of their idea of not normal people. You know, I must be weird and different because I am not feminine. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you must have some, like, weird thing going on. Like, I don't know. And I find that a lot of people that are not different, they just don't necessarily... They just want to be their own person without fitting into everybody's ideas of what gender means, I guess, if that.
Yeah. I see where you're at there. We're definitely we've came into this age where the old school rules for genders were basically based on a biological need, and all the MRAs out there listening know exactly what I mean by all of that. And me and you've discussed this before, but we're past the point where we don't need to protect women because we need to make sure that all the eggs get made, and we don't need to just send men out to die because it's not all hand-to-hand combat with swords and clubs anymore. The world's fucking moved on. So, and that's me taking the extremes, but it's all in the middle there too. So it's ridiculous in my lifetime, for example, having to take a parenting class to make sure that I can be a single dad for no other reason than I'm a man. And it's just as ridiculous for women to have to prove themselves in order to be taken seriously at work or in social lives, for example. But that's where we're at still. The old hold-ons. It's like we're trying to get there, but biologically we're just being a little held back.
I want men to take up this mantle so that their daughters, sisters, and mothers can be free from prejudice, but also so that their sons have permission to be vulnerable and human too. Reclaim those parts of themselves they abandoned, and in doing so, be a more true and complete version of themselves.
This is another spot where her lack of research or / ignorance plays a huge role, because sure, it's nice if society says that it's okay that if men show their emotions and stuff, but what's way more important in my book is that, like, society allows, like, some of these laws that, like, the kind of stuff that I face, those are the kind of things that actually matter to me and to other people like me. So, and when she says things like, you know, you're allowed to be your truer self because you show your emotions, there's a lot of guys that just don't want to show their feelings. And it's not just because society's that way. It's just because that's a lot of people feel. I mean, there's a lot of girls that are that way. A lot of people just don't feel like showing all their emotions. They want to keep their cards close to their chest. So that to me, exactly. So that to me seems like it's the kind of point that it feels like it's made from a more female perspective than a male perspective, so it's not a very good bit of bait to recruit people with.
I thought it was cool that she said at 9 minutes and 45 seconds that she wants men to be a part of the movement, not only for the women in their lives, but for the boys and men, which I think is important because it comes across to me as if she's kind of being like, hey, we need you to help us for us, but I think she's trying at least to be like, I think you could use this movement as well. I think that if we come together, we can all benefit from it.
Yeah, I see that.
Which I think is the idea, but again, it fell flat maybe a little bit.
And well, and you know, I mean, this video was influential in you becoming a feminist, and it's after talking to me, you see different points of it, and after talking to you, I see the points that you saw. It was hard for me to see them before because the things she said otherwise were like irritating. And I think that's an important thing, is that it's like with the two of us talking about this stuff together, we both end up with a bigger insight into the situation, where if she would have had the same kind of insight beforehand, she could have ironed her speech into something more palatable to everyone.
Yeah.
15.5 million girls will be married in the next 16 years as children.
I just liked that she brought a fact to the table, and one that I've heard before, and articles that I've read before, and issues that I've made myself aware to before, is child marriage. And she said 15.5 million girls will be married in the next 16 years as children, which I think she didn't really touch on it a whole lot. It was just, she touched on it very briefly to make a point, to make a statement. She didn't really go into it as an issue, but I wish that she would have gone into it a little more as an issue.
Well, like so many other things here, she missed the issue. It's like she gets going that direction and then she falls short.
She like says something and you're like, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But then she never once seems to carry the ball across the line. She's always just like, check this out, and then, oh, well, yeah, that's a good thing, except for everything you said afterwards is kind of stupid. So what do you think she could have done to have made this video better? What could she have done to make her speech better?
I think we pretty much agree on that point. Just a little more education, a little more knowledge, facts. I think she had a lot of good points, a lot of good ideas, but when carried through to when she kept talking about them, they just kind of fell. That's where she lost me, is she'd say something and it'd be like, that's a good point, I like that a lot, and then she'd just kind of say something to contradict it, or say something else that was like, what? That's not the point at all. Like, what are you talking about now? It
felt like, even on a fundamental level, to me, it's like the whole name, he for she. While it sounds catchy, it's like, do you understand what you're saying? Imagine if men had a movement called she for he. I have to give her credit that a number of times she said things that it sounded like her heart was in the right place. Like, this is hurting men too kind of thing. But then she had no real knowledge of what she was talking about. And she said it all from a female's perspective, and not really taking into account that, guys want to be able to talk about their feelings. Well, yeah, sure, great. That'd be nice to be able to talk about our feelings. How about the guys that are in prison? Maybe the guys that. There's so many situations that affect men that she's just oblivious to. And had she done just seriously like one good day's worth of research, if she would have just rolled up her sleeves and said, I'm going to get on Google for one day and I'm going to see what it is that men who complain about gender politics, what are they saying? If she would have done that, she could have made this into something that would have attracted, instead of made her a hero to the feminists and a laughingstock to the men's rights activists. So hopefully between the two of us, we've pointed out where we think she could have done better.
I think it could have been good. I think it was good in parts.
Yeah, in parts it was good, and
yeah.
It had potential. I mean, she definitely had the platform. Holy shit, she had a platform.
Dude, fucking UN.
Yeah. Oh well, I think that's all we really got to say about this for this time. Please help us. For those of you who are still here, please help us find a name. All right, thank you. See you next time. Have a good night. Bye. Hello. Why are you still here?
Oh my God.
I'm kidding. That's not